The gunshot that killed Samuel Whitmore, banker and predator, echoed through Murphy's, California on a scorching August afternoon in 1878, and Adelaide Zimmerman knew her life would never be the same. She ran through the dusty streets with her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs, the derringer still warm in her trembling hand. People were shouting behind her, their voices blending into a cacophony of rage and confusion. Adelaide had no plan, no destination, just the desperate animal instinct to survive. Her boots kicked up clouds of red dirt as she fled toward the edge of town, her dark hair coming loose from its pins, and streaming behind her like a flag of surrender she refused to wave. The buildings thinned out, giving way to rolling hills dotted with oak trees and cattle ranches. Adelaide's lungs burned, her corset making it impossible to draw a full breath, but she pushed forward. In the distance, she spotted a weathered barn, its red paint faded to a rusty brown by years of California sun. Without thinking, she veered toward it, praying whoever owned it was nowhere near. The barn door stood partially open, and Adelaide slipped inside, immediately enveloped by the smell of hay, leather, and horses. 3 horses occupied the stalls, and they turned their heads to regard her with mild curiosity. She pressed herself against the wall, gasping for air, trying to quiet her ragged breathing. The derringer felt heavy in her hand now, almost accusatory. She had killed a man. She was a murderer. The law would hang her for certain, and no jury would believe her reasons, no matter how justified. Adelaide climbed the ladder to the hayloft, each rung requiring effort her exhausted body could barely muster. Once up top, she burrowed into the hay, pulling it around her like a blanket, trying to make herself invisible. Through the gaps in the barn walls, she could see the sun beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed obscene in their beauty considering what she had done. She must have dozed despite her terror, because the sound of the barn door opening fully jolted her awake. Adelaide froze, her hand instinctively reaching for the derringer she had tucked into her skirt pocket. Heavy footsteps crossed the barn floor below, accompanied by the jingle of spurs and the low, gentle voice of a man talking to his horses. "There you are, copper. Did you miss me, boy? Let me get that saddle off you." Adelaide held her breath, watching through the cracks in the floorboards as a tall figure moved around below. The man wore a brown Stetson, his broad shoulders stretching the fabric of his work shirt. He moved with the easy confidence of someone completely at home in his surroundings, stroking the horse's neck as he unbuckled the saddle. "Sheriff came by the north pasture today," the man continued, still talking to his horse in that same gentle tone. "Seems there was some trouble in town. Woman shot Samuel Whitmore right in his office. Can't say I'm surprised someone finally did it. Man was rotten clear through." Adelaide's heart leaped into her throat. She shifted slightly, trying to get a better view, and her foot knocked against a wooden beam. The sound seemed deafening in the quiet barn. The man froze. His hand moved to his hip, where Adelaide could now see a revolver holstered at his side. "Who's up there?" His voice had changed, no longer gentle but commanding, alert. Adelaide considered staying silent, but what was the point? If he came up here, she would be trapped. At least if she revealed herself, she might have a chance to run. She stood slowly, hay falling from her dress and hair, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. The derringer stayed in her pocket. "Please," she said, her voice hoarse from thirst and fear. "Please, I mean you no harm, I just needed a place to hide." The man tilted his head back to look up at her, and even in the dimming light, Adelaide could see the sharp intelligence in his eyes. He was younger than his confident manner suggested, probably no more than 30, with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble and a straight nose that looked like it had been broken at least once. His expression was unreadable. "You're the one who shot Whitmore," he said. It was not a question. Adelaide's throat tightened. She considered lying but found she could not. "Yes. Come down from there. Are you going to turn me in? Come down and we will talk about it." Adelaide's legs shook as she descended the ladder. When her feet touched the ground, she turned to face him, keeping several feet of distance between them. Up close, she could see he was tall, at least 6 feet, with brown hair that curled slightly at the ends where it touched his collar. His eyes were a clear gray, the color of storm clouds, and they studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away. "My name is Russell Stone," he said. "This is my ranch, such as it is. You are Adelaide Zimmerman." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Well, Miss Zimmerman, you have had quite a day, I imagine. You look about ready to collapse. When did you last eat or drink anything?" The question was so unexpected that Adelaide could only stare at him. This morning, before I." She could not finish the sentence. Russell nodded slowly. "The house is about 100 yards from here. I suggest you come with me, get some food and water in you, and then you can tell me why you shot one of the richest men in Calaveras County. You would help me. You do not even know what I did or why." "No, but I know Samuel Whitmore, and I know he was not the type of man anyone would shoot without good reason, particularly not a woman who looks like she has been through hell." He paused, then added, "And I know what it is like to be desperate and alone. Come on." Adelaide followed him out of the barn on unsteady legs, her mind reeling. This made no sense. He should be dragging her to the sheriff, not offering her food. But she was too tired, too hungry, and too frightened to question good fortune when it appeared. The ranch house was modest but well-maintained, a single-story building with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Russell held the door open for her, and Adelaide stepped inside to find a simple but clean interior. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a worn leather sofa positioned in front of it. The kitchen occupied the back of the main room, and Adelaide could see 2 doors leading off to what she assumed were bedrooms. "Sit," Russell said, gesturing to the kitchen table. "I will get you some water first." Adelaide sank into the chair, her whole body trembling now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Russell pumped water from the sink and brought her a tin cup. She drank it so fast she nearly choked, and he refilled it without comment. The second cup she drank more slowly, feeling the cool water soothe her parched throat. Russell moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, pulling out bread, cheese, and some cold chicken. He set it in front of her along with a plate. "Eat slowly. Your stomach will revolt if you go too fast." Adelaide forced herself to take small bites, even though every cell in her body screamed at her to devour the food. Russell sat down across from her, removing his hat and setting it on the table. His hair was matted with sweat, and he ran a hand through it absently. "Now," he said quietly, "tell me what happened." Adelaide set down the piece of bread she had been holding. Her hands were shaking again. Samuel Whitmore, he." The words stuck in her throat like broken glass. "Take your time." She forced herself to look at Russell, to meet those steady gray eyes. "My father died 6 months ago. He was a miner, had a claim up in the hills that was doing well enough. We were not rich, but we were comfortable. When he died, everything should have come to me. I am his only child, his only family, but there were debts, or so Mr. Whitmore claimed. He was the one who held the papers, the one who handled all the finances in town. He said my father owed him money, far more than the claim was worth." Russell's expression darkened. "Let me guess. He offered you a solution." Adelaide nodded, bile rising in her throat at the memory. "He said he would forgive the debt if I agreed to be his mistress. He already had a wife, but that did not matter to him. He said it was a generous offer, that most men would not be so kind. When I refused, he took the claim anyway, took everything. I had nowhere to go, no money. I took work at the hotel, cleaning rooms, washing linens. It was honest work, and I did not mind it. But he did not leave you alone. No, Adelaide's voice cracked. He came to see me last week. Said he still wanted me, that he could make my life very easy or very difficult depending on my answer. I refused again. This morning he cornered me in his office. He had sent word that he wanted to discuss my father's claim, said maybe he had made an error in the calculations. I was fool enough to believe him. When I got there, he locked the door. He said no one would believe me if I told what happened in that room, that he was a respected man and I was nobody. He tried to force himself on me. Russell's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching beneath the stubble. How did you get the gun? It was my father's. The only thing of his I managed to keep. I had started carrying it after Mr. Whitmore's visit last week. I was frightened. When he grabbed me, when he started tearing at my dress, I pulled it out. I told him to stop, to let me go. He laughed. He said I would not shoot him. So I did. The silence that followed was heavy. Adelaide could not read Russell's expression, could not tell if he believed her or thought her a liar. She braced herself for judgment, for the inevitable moment when he would drag her to town and collect whatever reward the sheriff was surely offering. Instead, Russell stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening landscape. Samuel Whitmore tried to cheat me once, years ago. I had just bought this land, was young and did not know any better. He offered to hold the deed, said it was standard practice. Something told me not to trust him. I took the papers to a lawyer in San Andreas instead. Turned out Whitmore had pulled that trick before, holding deeds and then claiming ownership when people could not produce their papers. 2 families lost their land that way before anyone caught on. He turned back to face her. He was a predator, Miss Zimmerman. He hurt people because he could, because he had money and power and knew the law would protect him over anyone else. You did what you had to do to survive. No jury would see it that way, though. They would see a poor woman who killed a rich man, and they would hang you for it regardless of the circumstances. So you are going to turn me in? Adelaide felt numb. At least she had gotten a meal and some kindness before the end. No, Russell said firmly. I am not. Adelaide blinked. What? I said I am not turning you in. The sheriff is a friend of Whitmore's. You would not make it to trial. I have seen frontier justice before, Miss Zimmerman. It is rarely just. He crossed his arms, leaning back against the wall. You will stay here until we figure out what to do. The barn is the first place they will look if they come here, so you will have to stay in the house. I cannot ask you to risk yourself for me. You do not know me. You are not asking, I am offering. And you are right, I do not know you, but I know enough. His expression softened slightly. I know you are terrified. I know you are alone. I know you tried every other option before you pulled that trigger. That is enough for me. Adelaide felt tears burning behind her eyes, the first she had shed since pulling the trigger. Why would you do this? Russell was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. 10 years ago, my sister was in a situation similar to yours. Different man, different town, but the same story. She did not have a gun. She did not fight back. She hanged herself in the barn of the man who owned the saloon where she worked. She was 19 years old. I am so sorry. The words felt inadequate, but Adelaide did not know what else to say. So am I, every day. Russell pushed off from the wall. You can take my room. I will sleep out here on the sofa. We will figure out the rest tomorrow. Russell, I cannot take your bed. Yes, you can. You are exhausted and you need proper rest. Do not argue with me on this, Miss Zimmerman. I am a stubborn man. Despite everything, Adelaide felt a ghost of a smile touch her lips. Adelaide, please call me Adelaide. Adelaide then. And you can call me Russell or Russ if you prefer. Most people go with Russ. He showed her to his room, which was as simply furnished as the rest of the house. A large bed covered with a worn quilt dominated the space, and a dresser stood against one wall. Everything was neat, organized, speaking to a man who valued order and simplicity. There is water in the pitcher if you want to wash up. I will be right outside if you need anything. Russell paused in the doorway. Try to get some sleep, Adelaide. You are safe here. After he left, closing the door behind him, Adelaide sank onto the edge of the bed. Her whole body ached, and her mind felt like it was stuffed with cotton. She should have been planning her next move, figuring out where she could go, how she could escape. Instead, all she could think about was the way Russell had looked at her with those storm cloud eyes, how he had believed her story without question, how his sister's tragedy had made him into the kind of man who would harbor a fugitive without hesitation. Adelaide removed her boots and lay down on top of the quilt, too tired to undress properly. The pillow smelled like sage and leather, and despite everything, she felt herself drifting towards sleep. For the first time since she had pulled that trigger, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. Adelaide woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. For a confused moment, she thought she was back in her father's small cabin, that he was making breakfast before his shift at the mine. Then reality crashed back over her, and she sat up with a gasp. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, bright and cheerful, completely at odds with her situation. Adelaide ran her hands through her tangled hair and tried to smooth her wrinkled dress. She must look a fright, but there was nothing to be done about it now. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Russell at the stove, tending to a pan of bacon and eggs. He had changed his shirt and shaved, and his hair was still damp from washing. He looked up when she entered, offering a small smile. "Good morning. I hope you are hungry. I made enough for two." "I should not be eating your food," Adelaide said, even as her stomach growled audibly at the smell. "Well, I cannot eat it all myself, and it would be a shame to waste it. Sit down." Adelaide did as she was told, accepting the plate he set in front of her. The eggs were perfectly cooked, the yolk still soft, and the bacon was crispy. She ate more slowly this morning, savoring each bite. Russell sat across from her with his own plate, and they ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. "I have been thinking about your situation," Russell said eventually, setting down his fork. "You cannot stay in Calaveras County. The sheriff will search every ranch, every building within 20 miles of Murphy's. We need to get you somewhere else, somewhere safe where you can start fresh." "Where would I go? I have no money, no family, nothing." "I have a friend in Oregon, runs a ranch up near Portland. He is always looking for help, and he would not ask questions if I vouched for you. It is far enough away that no one would connect you to what happened here." Adelaide stared at him. "You would send me to a friend, risk involving someone else. Tom owes me his life about 3 times over. He would not betray my trust." Russell leaned back in his chair. "But getting you there is the problem. The stage routes would be too dangerous. Someone might recognize you. We would have to go overland through the mountains. It would take at least 2 weeks, maybe more." Adelaide's heart skipped a beat. "You cannot travel alone. A woman on her own would attract too much attention. And I am not going to send you off into the wilderness by yourself. I will take you to Oregon, make sure you get settled with Tom, and then come back." "Russell, that is asking too much. You have already done more than anyone could expect. I cannot let you abandon your ranch for weeks just to help me." His gray eyes met hers steadily. "This ranch will still be here when I get back. My cattle will be fine for a few weeks. One of my neighbors owes me a favor. He can keep an eye on the place. You, on the other hand, will not be fine if I leave you to fend for yourself." Adelaide felt that burning sensation behind her eyes again. No one had cared about her well-being in months, not since her father died. The kindness felt almost painful in its unexpectedness. "I do not know how I could ever repay you. I am not asking for repayment. I am asking you to let me help." Russell stood, collecting their empty plates. "We will need to prepare, gather supplies, plan our route. I want to leave tomorrow night, travel under darkness until we are well clear of the area." The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Russell made a list of everything they would need for the journey, then rode into town to purchase supplies. Adelaide spent the time alone in the house, jumping at every sound, terrified that the sheriff would appear at any moment. But the hours passed without incident, and Russell returned in the late afternoon with saddlebags full of food, ammunition, and other necessities. "Any trouble?" Adelaide asked as he unloaded everything onto the kitchen table. "Some talk in the mercantile about the search for you. Sheriff Hawkins is convinced you are hiding somewhere in town. He is checking every boarding house, every hotel. A few men mentioned searching the outlying ranches, but Hawkins seems to think you would not get that far on foot." Russell's expression was grim. "Whitmore's wife is offering a reward, $500 for information leading to your capture." Adelaide felt her stomach drop. $500. That is more money than most people see in a year, which means we need to be very careful. Money like that will make people look twice at every stranger they see. Russell began sorting the supplies into 2 piles. "I am going to teach you to shoot properly. If we run into trouble on the trail, I need to know you can handle yourself." They spent the evening behind the barn, away from any potential prying eyes. Russell set up targets on hay bales and showed Adelaide how to properly aim and fire his spare revolver. The Derringer had been adequate for close range, but it would be useless for anything else. "Keep both eyes open," Russell instructed, standing close behind her to adjust her stance. "Do not anticipate the recoil. Squeeze the trigger, do not pull it." Adelaide tried to focus on his words, but she was acutely aware of his proximity, the warmth of his body near hers, the gentle way his hands corrected her grip. She fired, and the can on the hay bale flew backward. "Good," Russell said, satisfaction in his voice. "Again." They practiced until the sun set and it became too dark to see the targets clearly. Adelaide's arms ached and her ears rang from the gunfire, but she had hit more targets than she missed by the end. Russell seemed pleased. "You are a quick learner," he said as they walked back to the house. "That will serve you well in Oregon. Life is not easy on a ranch, but I think you will manage just fine." That night, Adelaide lay awake in Russell's bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow they would begin the journey to Oregon, to a new life where no one knew her name or what she had done. She should have been grateful, relieved, and she was. But she was also aware of a strange ache in her chest when she thought about saying goodbye to Russell once they reached Portland. She had known him for barely more than a day, yet he had shown her more kindness and understanding than anyone else in her life except her father. More than that, she felt safe with him in a way that went beyond physical protection. When he looked at her, she did not see judgment or pity. She saw respect, compassion, and something else she could not quite name. Adelaide rolled onto her side, pulling the quilt up to her chin. She could not afford to think like this. Russell was helping her because he was a good man who had lost his sister to a similar tragedy. His kindness was not romantic interest. She was a fugitive, and he was her only chance at freedom. That was all this was, all it could ever be. But as she finally drifted to sleep, her last thought was of the way his hands had felt on hers as he taught her to shoot, steady and sure and infinitely gentle. They left at midnight under a sky thick with stars. Russell led 2 horses from the barn, both already saddled and loaded with supplies. He boosted Adelaide onto the smaller of the 2, a gentle mare named Daisy, and then mounted his own horse, Copper. "We will head north through the foothills," Russell said quietly. "Stay off the main roads as much as possible. It will be slower but safer." Adelaide nodded, her heart pounding. This was really happening. She was leaving California, leaving everything she had ever known. Russell clicked his tongue, and Copper started forward at an easy walk. Daisy followed without prompting, and they moved away from the ranch house into the darkness. The first night of travel was tense. Every sound made Adelaide jump, certain that a posse was about to come thundering out of the darkness to drag her back to Murphy's. But Russell remained calm, guiding them through terrain he clearly knew well. When dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, he led them off the trail to a small grove of trees near a creek. "We will rest here during the day, travel again tonight," he explained, dismounting. "Help me get the horses settled, then you should try to sleep." They worked together to unsaddle the horses and let them drink from the creek. Russell spread out bedrolls in the shelter of the trees, positioning them so they would be hidden from anyone passing on the trail. Adelaide was exhausted, but she was not sure she could sleep with sunlight streaming through the leaves and the sounds of birds singing overhead. "Lie down," Russell said gently. "I will keep watch. You need to sleep too." "I will rest later. Right now you need it more than I do." Adelaide wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her by choosing that moment to sway with fatigue. She lay down on the bedroll, and Russell draped a blanket over her despite the warmth of the morning. Within minutes, she was asleep. When she woke, the sun was high overhead and Russell was sitting with his back against a tree trunk, his hat pulled low over his eyes. His revolver rested on his lap, and one hand lay near it, ready to grab it at a moment's notice. Adelaide watched him for a moment, taking in the strong line of his jaw, the breadth of his shoulders, the competent way he held himself even in rest. She sat up quietly, not wanting to startle him, but his eyes opened immediately at the sound of her movement. "Feel better?" he asked. "Yes." "Have you slept at all?" "A bit. I am used to getting by on little sleep." He stretched, rolling his shoulders. "There is jerky and hardtack in the saddlebag if you are hungry. Not fancy, but it will keep your strength up." They ate a sparse meal, conserving their supplies. Russell checked and rechecked the horses, tightening straps and making small adjustments. Adelaide could see the careful way he planned everything, leaving nothing to chance. It made her feel safer, knowing she was with someone so competent. As the afternoon wore on, they talked in low voices about inconsequential things. Russell told her about building his ranch from nothing, about the hard years when drought nearly broke him, about the satisfaction of seeing his herd grow and thrive. Adelaide talked about her father, about growing up in mining camps, about her mother who had died when Adelaide was young. "She was from San Francisco originally," Adelaide said, a wistful note in her voice. "Came from a good family, had education and refinement. Then she fell in love with my father, a rough miner who had nothing but big dreams. Her family disowned her when she married him. She never regretted it, though. She said love was worth more than money or social standing." "Sounds like a wise woman," Russell said. "She was." "I wish I had known her better. I was only 7 when she got sick. Pneumonia took her in less than a week." "I am sorry. That is young to lose a mother." "What about your parents?" Adelaide asked, then immediately regretted it when she saw the shadow that crossed his face. "You do not have to answer that." "No, it is all right. They are gone too. My father died in the war, fought for the Union. My mother passed a year later. I think losing him broke something in her. My sister and I went to live with an uncle in Nevada." He was not a bad man, but he had his own family and we were just extra mouths to feed. When I turned 18, I struck out on my own. Brought my sister with me when I could afford it. That was 2 years before she. He trailed off, not finishing the sentence. Adelaide reached out instinctively, placing her hand over his. I am sorry, Russell. I cannot imagine how hard that must have been. He looked down at their joined hands, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then Russell turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with hers. His palm was warm and calloused, his grip gentle but firm. She would have liked you, he said softly. Sarah, she would have admired your courage. I do not feel courageous, I feel terrified. Being brave does not mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and doing what needs to be done anyway. That is what you did when you defended yourself. That is what you are doing now by starting over. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. You are one of the strongest people I have met, Adelaide Zimmerman. Adelaide's breath caught in her throat. The way he was looking at her, the tenderness in his expression, made her chest tighten with an emotion she was afraid to name. This was dangerous, letting herself feel anything beyond gratitude. In a few weeks, they would reach Oregon and go their separate ways. She could not let herself hope for anything more. But as they sat there in the dappled shade, hands entwined, Adelaide found that hope blooming in her heart anyway, fragile and persistent as a wildflower pushing through rocky soil. They continued their pattern for the next week, traveling by night and resting during the day. Russell proved to be an excellent guide, knowing exactly where to find water and shelter, how to avoid areas where they might encounter other travelers. They saw no signs of pursuit, and gradually Adelaide began to relax, to believe that perhaps they had truly escaped. The nights took on a rhythm. They would ride for hours in comfortable silence, sometimes talking in low voices about nothing important, sometimes simply existing together in the darkness. Russell pointed out constellations, telling her the stories behind them. Adelaide found herself looking forward to these conversations, to the sound of his voice, to the moments when he would look over at her and smile. During the days, they grew closer in other ways. Russell taught her practical skills, showing her how to start a fire with damp wood, how to track animals, how to read the landscape for signs of water or danger. Adelaide proved to be an apt student, and Russell's praise, though sparing, meant more to her than it probably should have. One afternoon, about 10 days into their journey, Adelaide woke from her rest to find Russell sitting nearby, whittling a piece of wood with his knife. She watched him work, fascinated by the dexterity of his hands, the concentration on his face. "What are you making?" she asked, sitting up. Russell looked up, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. "Nothing important, just keeping my hands busy." "Can I see?" He hesitated, then handed her the piece of wood. Adelaide was surprised to find it was taking the shape of a small bird, its wings partially spread as if caught in mid-flight. The detail was remarkable, each feather carefully carved. "Russell, this is beautiful. I had no idea you could do this. It is just a hobby, something my father taught me before he went off to war." He took the carving back, running his thumb over the wood. "I used to make them for Sarah. She loved birds, said they represented freedom. Will you make one for me?" The words came out before Adelaide could stop them, and she immediately felt foolish. "I mean, only if you want to. I did not mean to presume." "I would like that," Russell said, meeting her eyes. "I will make you one. We have plenty of travel time left." As the days passed, Adelaide noticed the carving taking shape during their rest stops. Russell worked on it in quiet moments, sometimes glancing at her as if using her as a muse. The gesture touched her deeply, this tangible evidence that she mattered to him, that he wanted to create something for her. They were nearly 2 weeks into their journey when they had their first real scare. Russell had led them to a small town called Auburn to resupply, sending Adelaide to wait with the horses while he went into the general store. She was trying to remain inconspicuous when a man approached, tipping his hat. "Afternoon, miss. That is a fine horse you have there." "Thank you," Adelaide said, keeping her voice neutral and her face averted. "You traveling through? Do not often see a lady traveling alone. My husband is in the store." Adelaide gestured vaguely toward the building, praying the man would lose interest. "Is that so? Where are you folks headed?" Before Adelaide could answer, Russell appeared, his hand immediately going to her elbow in a possessive gesture that looked entirely natural. "There you are, dear. Got everything we need." He turned to the stranger with a polite but cool nod. "Afternoon." "Just making conversation with your wife," the man said. "Nice to see young couples making their way in the world. Indeed, we should be going. Long ride ahead." Russell helped Adelaide mount Daisy, then swung up onto Copper with easy grace. They rode out of town at a measured pace, not too fast to attract attention, not too slow to seem like they were lingering. Once they were safely away, Adelaide let out a shaky breath. "That was close. Do you think he suspected anything?" "No, but we need to be more careful. From now on, when we need to stop in towns, we are husband and wife. It is the only explanation that makes sense for us traveling together." Russell glanced at her. "If that makes you uncomfortable, we can avoid towns altogether, but our supplies will only stretch so far." "No, it makes sense. When you called me dear, it sounded so natural." Russell's lips quirked in a half-smile. "Did it? I suppose I should practice being a convincing husband then." There was something in his tone that made Adelaide's heart skip, a warmth that went beyond play-acting for strangers. She told herself she was reading too much into it, but she could not quite make herself believe it. That night, as they made camp in a canyon sheltered from the wind, Russell handed her the finished bird carving. It was exquisite, every detail perfect, the wood polished smooth. Adelaide cradled it in her palm, overwhelmed by the gift. "It is perfect," she whispered. "Thank you, Russell. I am glad you like it." He was standing close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body in the cool night air. "Adelaide, I need to tell you something." Her heart began to race. "What is it?" Russell seemed to struggle with his words, opening his mouth and then closing it again. Finally, he said, "When we get to Oregon, to Tom's ranch. If you do not like it there, if it is not what you hoped, you do not have to stay. I want you to know that." "Where else would I go? You could." He paused, his gray eyes searching her face. "You could come back with me to California, to my ranch." Adelaide's breath caught. "Russell, the law. Enough time will have passed. Whitmore's death will be old news. No one would be looking for Adelaide Zimmerman anymore. You could take a new name, start fresh, be someone new. Live on your ranch." Adelaide's voice was barely audible over the pounding of her heart. "Yes, with me." Russell took a step closer. "These weeks we have spent together, getting to know you, seeing your strength and your courage and your kindness. Adelaide, you have become important to me, more important than I expected. I know this is sudden. I know we have not known each other long, but I cannot let you go without at least telling you that I have feelings for you. Real feelings." Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes. "I have feelings for you too." "I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it was just gratitude or fear or loneliness, but it is not. Russell, when I think about saying goodbye to you in Oregon, my heart breaks." "Then do not say goodbye." His hands came up to cup her face, his touch impossibly gentle. "Stay with me. Not as a fugitive I am helping, but as the woman I love. Because I do love you, Adelaide. I think I started falling for you the moment you stood up in my hayloft, terrified but brave, ready to fight even though you were outnumbered and exhausted. You love me. The words felt like a miracle. I love you, Russell confirmed, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. I know it is fast. I know we should take more time, be more sensible. But I have learned that life is short and uncertain, and when you find something real, something good, you should hold on to it with everything you have. So I am asking you, Adelaide Zimmerman, will you give us a chance? Will you come home with me when this is over? In answer, Adelaide rose up on her toes and kissed him. Russell made a small sound of surprise that quickly turned into a groan as he pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her waist. The kiss was everything Adelaide had dreamed of and more, tender and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Russell rested his forehead against hers. I will take that as a yes, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Yes, Adelaide confirmed, laughing through her tears. Yes, I will come home with you, I will be with you. I love you, Russell Stone. They kissed again under the stars, and Adelaide felt something shift inside her, like a weight she had been carrying finally lifting. For the first time since her father died, she felt like she had a future, a real future full of hope and possibility. The woman who had killed Samuel Whitmore in self-defense would cease to exist, and in her place would be someone new, someone who belonged to the man holding her so carefully, as if she were precious and fragile and infinitely valuable. They continued their journey north with a new sense of purpose and joy. The fear and tension that had marked the first part of their trip gave way to something softer, sweeter. They still traveled carefully, still maintained their vigilance, but now they rode side by side when the terrain allowed, hands occasionally brushing, secret smiles exchanged in the darkness. Russell told her about his plans for the ranch, the improvements he wanted to make, the herd he hoped to build. Adelaide listened with genuine interest, asking questions and offering suggestions. She had never thought of herself as a rancher's wife, but the more Russell talked, the more appealing the idea became. I always wanted to add some chickens, Adelaide said one night as they sat by their campfire. Fresh eggs every morning, and they are not difficult to care for. My mother kept chickens when I was small. I remember collecting the eggs with her. Chickens sound good, Russell agreed. Maybe some pigs too eventually. We could be mostly self-sufficient if we did it right. Adelaide repeated softly, loving the sound of it. I like that. We. Russell reached over and took her hand, interlacing their fingers in a gesture that had become habitual over the past days. Get used to it. It is going to be we for a very long time if I have anything to say about it. How long are we talking? Forever, if you will have me. Russell's expression was serious despite the lightness of his tone. I know we have not talked about marriage specifically, but Adelaide, that is my intention. I want to marry you properly and legally as soon as we can manage it. I want you to be my wife in every sense of the word. Adelaide felt warmth flood through her chest. I want that too. I want to be your wife, Russell. I want to build a life with you. Then we will. We will go to Oregon, let Tom think you are working for him for a few months, give everything time to settle. Then we will head back to California, and I will marry you the moment we can find a preacher. No one will question it. Plenty of ranchers find wives in unexpected places. Your past will stay buried, and we will have our future. It sounded too good to be true, but looking at Russell's face in the firelight, seeing the love and determination there, Adelaide allowed herself to believe it. She had survived her father's death, Whitmore's predation, and her desperate flight from justice. Surely she could survive happiness too. They reached the outskirts of Portland 3 weeks after leaving Russell's ranch. The journey had been long and occasionally difficult, with bad weather, difficult terrain, and a few more close calls with curious strangers. But they had made it, and now they stood on a bluff overlooking the Columbia River, the city spread out below them. "Tom's ranch is about 10 miles east of here," Russell said, consulting the directions he had written down before they left California. "We should reach it by afternoon." Adelaide nodded, but her stomach was in knots. Meeting Tom, starting her new temporary life, pretending to be just a woman Russell was helping rather than the woman he loved. It all felt wrong somehow, even though she knew it was necessary. Russell seemed to sense her unease. He dismounted and helped her down from Daisy, then pulled her into his arms. "I know this is hard. I know pretending we are not together will be difficult, but it is only for a few months, just long enough for the dust to settle back home. Then I am coming back for you, and we are starting our real life together. What if something happens? What if you get back to California and decide this was all a mistake? We have been living in such close quarters, such unusual circumstances. Maybe what we feel is just—" Russell silenced her with a kiss, deep and thorough and leaving no room for doubt. When he pulled back, his gray eyes were intense. "What I feel for you has nothing to do with circumstances and everything to do with who you are. You are brave and kind and strong. You are beautiful inside and out. You make me laugh. You make me want to be a better man. I love you, Adelaide, and that is not going to change whether we are on the trail or living normal lives. Do you believe me?" "Yes," Adelaide whispered. "I believe you, and I love you too, so much it frightens me sometimes." "Then trust that. Trust us. This is not goodbye, it is just a brief separation. I promise you I will come back." They found Tom's ranch easily enough, following the landmarks Russell had described. It was a large operation, much bigger than Russell's spread, with several barns, corrals full of horses, and a sprawling ranch house. A tall man with sandy hair and a weathered face emerged from one of the barns as they rode up, his face breaking into a wide grin when he recognized Russell. "Russ Stone, what in the hell are you doing this far north?" Tom strode forward, clasping Russell's hand and pulling him into a brief, backslapping embrace. "It has been, 3 years? About that. You are looking well, Tom. Ranch seems to be thriving. Cannot complain, and who is this?" Tom turned his attention to Adelaide, his expression curious but friendly. "This is Adelaide Zimmerman. She is looking for work, fresh start. I told her you were always in need of good help and could be trusted to treat people fairly." Tom's eyes narrowed slightly, and Adelaide could see the intelligence there, the understanding that Russell was not telling him everything. But he did not push. "Any friend of Russ's is welcome here. Can you cook, Miss Zimmerman?" "Yes, sir. I can also clean, tend animals, whatever you need." "Well, my current cook just quit to get married, so that timing is fortunate. Room and board plus $30 a month. How does that sound?" "Very generous, thank you." "Good, that is settled then. Let me show you to the bunkhouse. We have a separate building for female workers. You will have your own room." Tom glanced at Russell. "You staying the night before heading back?" "Just tonight. I need to get back to my ranch, but I wanted to make sure Adelaide was settled first." Tom showed Adelaide to a small but clean room in a building behind the main house. It had a bed, a dresser, and a washstand, everything she would need. After Tom left to give them privacy, Russell set Adelaide's saddlebag on the bed and then pulled her close. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is where I have to leave you for a while." "I know." Adelaide buried her face in his chest, breathing in his scent, trying to memorize the feeling of being in his arms. "How long?" 3 months, maybe 4 at most, long enough for things to quiet down completely. "Then I will come back for you and we will go home together." Russell tilted her chin up, kissing her gently. "Write to me if you can. General delivery to Murphy's. I will write to you too. What will you tell people when you get back, about where you have been?" "That I went north looking at breeding stock for my herd, No one will question it. Ranchers travel all the time for that kind of thing. He kissed her again, longer this time, pouring all his love and promise into it. Be safe, Adelaide, be careful. Remember that you are Adelaide Zimmerman from Sacramento, that you are starting fresh after your father's death, and that you answered an advertisement for ranch work. Keep your story simple and consistent. I will. You be safe too, and Russell, thank you for everything. For believing me, for helping me, for loving me. You saved my life in every way that matters. You saved mine too. I did not even realize how lonely I was until you showed up in my barn. Russell rested his forehead against hers. I love you. Remember that every day. I love you and I am coming back for you. They kissed one more time, clinging to each other, and then Russell forced himself to step back. If he did not leave now, he never would. He picked up his hat from where he had tossed it on the bed, settled it on his head, and walked to the door. At the threshold, he turned back. 4 months, Adelaide. Mark the days. I will be here before you know it. Then he was gone, and Adelaide was alone in a strange room in a strange place, her heart feeling like it had been torn in half. She sat on the bed and let herself cry, mourning the temporary loss while holding tight to the promise of reunion. The months at Tom's ranch passed slowly for Adelaide. The work was hard but honest. She cooked 3 meals a day for the ranch hands, cleaned the main house, and helped with various chores around the property. Tom was a fair employer, gruff but kind, and he never asked her uncomfortable questions about her past. The other workers were friendly enough, though Adelaide kept her distance, not wanting to form attachments or reveal too much about herself. She became known as quiet and hardworking, the woman who kept to herself and did her job without complaint. Every week, Adelaide walked to the small post office in the nearest town, hoping for a letter from Russell. The first one arrived 2 weeks after he left, and Adelaide read it so many times the paper began to wear thin at the creases. My dearest Adelaide, I hope this letter finds you well and settled at Tom's ranch. The journey back to California was uneventful, and I arrived home to find everything much as I left it. My neighbor kept his word and looked after the place admirably. No one has asked too many questions about my absence. As I predicted, my story about looking at breeding stock up north was accepted without suspicion. The trouble in Murphy's has faded from daily conversation. Whitmore's death is old news now, his widow having moved to San Francisco shortly after his funeral. The sheriff made a half-hearted effort to find you but gave up after a few weeks. There is talk that you likely died somewhere in the wilderness, or that you made it to San Francisco and lost yourself in the city. Either way, the active search is over. I think of you constantly. My house feels empty without you. I find myself talking to Copper about you, telling him about your smile, your courage, the sound of your laugh. He is a patient listener but a poor conversationalist. I am counting the days until I can come for you. 3 more months feels like an eternity, but I know it is necessary. We have to be smart, have to let enough time pass that no one will connect your return to my absence. Be safe, my love. Know that you are in my heart every moment of every day. Yours always. Russell. Adelaide wrote back immediately, pouring out her own feelings of loneliness and longing. She told him about life on the ranch, about Tom's kindness, about the way the Oregon landscape was beautiful but foreign compared to the California hills she had come to think of as home. The letters became a lifeline for both of them. They arrived weekly, sometimes more often, full of news and endearments and promises for the future. Russell told her about improvements he was making to the ranch, a new chicken coop he was building, the room he was preparing for her arrival. Adelaide told him about books she was reading, about the meals she was cooking, about the way she watched the road every day hoping to see him appear even though she knew it was too soon. Tom noticed her preoccupation and commented on it one evening as Adelaide was cleaning up after dinner. "You are waiting for someone," he said. It was not a question. Adelaide froze, her hands stilling in the dishwater. "I do not know what you mean." "Russ Stone, you are waiting for him to come back." Tom leaned against the counter, his expression knowing but not unkind. "I may be a simple rancher, Miss Zimmerman, but I am not blind. The way you two looked at each other when you arrived, the way you have been haunting the post office every week, you are in love with him." There was no point in denying it. "Yes," Adelaide admitted quietly. "We are planning to marry when he comes back for me." "That what I thought. Does this have something to do with why you needed a fresh start?" Adelaide met his eyes, trying to gauge how much he knew or suspected. "Tom, I cannot. I am not asking for details. Russ is a good man, one of the best I know. If he vouched for you, that is enough for me. I just want you to know that your secret, whatever it is safe here. And when Russ comes back, you go with him with my blessing. You have been a damn fine cook and a good worker. I will be sorry to lose you, but I will be happy for you too." "Thank you," Adelaide whispered, overwhelmed by his understanding. "That means more than you know. Just promise me you will invite me to the wedding. I want to see old Russ all gusset up in his Sunday best." Adelaide laughed, the tension breaking. "I promise." The 4th month arrived, and with it came a restlessness that Adelaide could not shake. Any day now Russell would come. She knew travel took time, knew he might be delayed by weather or ranch business, but still she found herself watching the road constantly, jumping at every sound of approaching hoofbeats. It was a clear afternoon in early November when she finally saw him. Adelaide was hanging laundry behind the bunkhouse when movement on the eastern road caught her eye. A lone rider on a big copper-colored horse, his brown Stetson silhouetted against the sky. Her heart stopped, then started again at double speed. Russell. Adelaide dropped the sheet she had been hanging and ran. She did not care who saw, did not care what anyone thought. She ran across the ranch yard, her skirts hiked up, her hair flying loose from its bun. Russell saw her coming and urged Copper into a gallop, closing the distance between them in seconds. He was out of the saddle before the horse fully stopped, and then Adelaide was in his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "You are here," she gasped between kisses. "You are really here. I told you I would come back for you." Russell held her so tight she could barely breathe, but she did not care. "God, I missed you. 4 months felt like 4 years. I know. I missed you too so much." Adelaide pulled back just far enough to look at him, taking in the beloved features she had dreamed about every night. "You look good. Tired, but good. You look beautiful. Even more beautiful than I remembered, and I remembered you as the most beautiful woman in the world." Russell cupped her face, kissing her again with a tenderness that made her knees weak. "Are you ready to come home?" "I have been ready since the day you left." Tom appeared from the barn, grinning broadly. "About damn time you showed up, Russ." "Adelaide has been wearing a path in the road with all her watching for you. Sorry to keep her waiting. Took longer to settle affairs than I expected." Russell shook Tom's hand warmly. "Thank you for taking care of her. I owe you. You owe me nothing. Just take care of this woman and treat her right. She is a keeper." "I plan to. In fact, I plan to marry her the moment we can find a preacher willing to perform the ceremony. There is a minister in town who could do it tomorrow if you are in a hurry. I could serve as witness if you need one." Russell looked at Adelaide, his eyes questioning. "Tomorrow? Is that too soon? I know women usually want more time to plan." "Tomorrow is perfect," Adelaide said firmly. "I do not need a fancy ceremony, Russell. I just need you." They were married the next day in a simple ceremony in the small church in town. Adelaide wore the best dress she owned, and Russell borrowed a coat from Tom that was slightly too big in the shoulders. Tom and his wife served as witnesses, and the whole thing was over in less than 20 minutes. But when the minister pronounced them husband and wife and Russell kissed her with such love and reverence that she felt it all the way to her soul, Adelaide thought it was the most perfect wedding that had ever taken place. Mrs. Adelaide Stone. She had a new name to go with her new life, and this one came with love and hope instead of fear and desperation. They stayed one more night at Tom's ranch, in a guest room in the main house that Tom insisted they use for their wedding night. Russell made love to Adelaide with such tenderness and passion that she cried from the beauty of it, from the overwhelming rightness of being with him this way. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Russell tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder while she listened to his heartbeat. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. "Happier than I ever thought I could be. You, completely. I have the woman I love, a home to take her to, a future ahead of us. What more could a man want?" Russell kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for trusting me, Adelaide, for giving us a chance. I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." "I could never regret you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They left for California the next morning, traveling the same route they had taken months before, but in reverse. This time there was no fear, no need to hide. They were simply a newly married couple heading home, and if anyone had connected Adelaide Stone to the woman who had killed Samuel Whitmore, they showed no sign of it. The journey felt shorter this time, perhaps because they traveled openly during the day, or perhaps because they were together and in love and eager to start their new life. They talked for hours about their plans, about the improvements they wanted to make to the ranch, about the family they hoped to have someday. "You want children?" Adelaide asked one night as they sat by their campfire. "Yes," Russell said without hesitation. "Do you?" "Very much. I always wanted a big family, brothers and sisters I never had. What about you? How many children do you envision?" "As many as we are blessed with. 2, 5, 10. However many you want," Adelaide laughed. "Maybe we should start with one and see how it goes." "Sounds like a good plan." Russell pulled her closer, kissing her temple. "You are going to be an amazing mother, patient and kind and strong. Our children will be lucky to have you." "They will be lucky to have you too. You will teach them everything you know. How to ride, how to shoot, how to read the land. How to be good and decent and kind." They arrived back at Russell's ranch, Adelaide's new home, on a crisp December afternoon. The house looked exactly as Adelaide remembered, modest but welcoming, with smoke curling from the chimney where Russell had arranged for his neighbor to light a fire before their arrival. Russell helped Adelaide down from her horse, and then, before she could take a step toward the house, he swept her up into his arms. "What are you doing?" Adelaide laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck, "Carrying my bride over the threshold. It is tradition." Russell carried her to the front door and kicked it open gently. "Welcome home, Mrs. Stone." Inside, Adelaide was surprised to find the house transformed. Fresh curtains hung in the windows, a colorful quilt covered the bed in the room that was now theirs, and wildflowers in a simple vase brightened the kitchen table. Russell set her down gently. "You did all this?" Adelaide asked, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "I wanted you to feel welcome, wanted it to feel like your home, not just mine." Russell looked almost shy, unusual for a man so confident in most things. "Do you like it?" "I love it. I love you." Adelaide threw her arms around him, overcome with emotion. "It is perfect, Russell, all of it." They settled into married life with surprising ease. Adelaide took over the cooking and maintaining the house, while Russell handled the ranch work. But they often worked side by side, Adelaide helping with the cattle when Russell needed an extra hand, Russell helping her plant a vegetable garden in the spring. They were partners in every sense, sharing the work and the joys and the challenges of ranch life. The neighbors accepted Adelaide without question. To them, she was simply Russell Stone's new wife, a woman he had met on his travels north. If anyone thought it strange that he had returned with a bride after what was supposed to be a business trip, they kept it to themselves. In the tight-knit ranching community, what mattered was that Russell seemed happy and that Adelaide proved herself to be hardworking and capable. Adelaide occasionally heard news from Murphy's, which was only about an hour's ride away. She learned that Whitmore's widow had indeed moved to San Francisco and that the bank had been sold to new owners. The search for Adelaide Zimmerman had been officially closed, the general consensus being that she had perished somewhere in the wilderness. Adelaide allowed herself to mourn that version of herself, the frightened girl who had pulled a trigger in self-defense. That woman was gone. In her place was Adelaide Stone, rancher's wife, survivor, woman in love. The first year of their marriage was blissful despite the hard work. They laughed together, worked together, made love with the passion of newlyweds. Russell proved to be everything Adelaide had hoped for in a husband: kind, attentive, supportive, and deeply loving. He never made her feel less than his equal, always asking her opinion on ranch decisions, always treating her contributions as valuable. In the spring of 1879, Adelaide discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but when she finally confirmed it, the joy was mixed with terror. She had seen too many women die in childbirth, including her own mother. But when she told Russell, his face lit up with such pure happiness that her fears receded. "We are going to be parents," he said, his hand moving reverently to her still flat stomach. "Adelaide, that is incredible." "Are you happy?" "Yes," she said and meant it. "Terrified but happy. I will take care of you. I will make sure you have everything you need. We will get through this together." Russell was true to his word. As Adelaide's pregnancy progressed, he became almost overprotective, insisting she rest more, taking over the heavier chores, riding to town himself to fetch anything she craved. Adelaide found it endearing even when it was slightly annoying. Their son was born on a cold January night in 1880, with the help of a midwife from a neighboring ranch. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Adelaide thought she might not survive it. But Russell never left her side, holding her hand, murmuring encouragement, giving her his strength when hers failed. When the baby finally arrived, healthy and screaming lustily, Adelaide burst into tears of relief and joy. Russell cut the cord with shaking hands, and when the midwife placed the baby in Adelaide's arms, he sat on the edge of the bed beside them, looking at his son with wonder. "He is perfect," Russell whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "You are perfect. God, Adelaide, you are so strong. You are so brave." "We have a son," Adelaide said, exhausted but euphoric. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but had not settled on anything definite. Russell looked at the baby, then at Adelaide. "What about Samuel, after my father?" Adelaide tensed at the name, her mind immediately going to Samuel Whitmore. Russell saw her reaction and shook his head quickly. "No, you are right. That name has bad associations for you. What about James? That was your father's name." "James Russell Stone," Adelaide said slowly, testing it out. "I like that. Jamie for short. Jamie it is." Russell kissed her forehead, then his son's. "Welcome to the world, Jamie Stone. You have the best mother in the world, and I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of being your father." Life with a baby was exhausting but fulfilling. Russell was a devoted father, often taking Jamie so Adelaide could rest, walking the floor with him when he cried in the night, making silly faces to coax out smiles. Adelaide loved watching them together, loved seeing the gentle way Russell handled their son, the pride in his eyes when Jamie reached developmental milestones. As Jamie grew from baby to toddler, the ranch continued to thrive. Russell's herd grew, and he was able to hire occasional help during busy seasons. Adelaide's garden flourished, providing more vegetables than they could use, so she started selling the excess in town. They were not rich, but they were comfortable and, more importantly, they were happy. When Jamie was 2, Adelaide became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and their daughter arrived in the summer of 1882 with far less drama than her brother's birth. They named her Rose, after Russell's mother, and she proved to be a placid baby, content to be held and observed as her older brother played nearby. The years passed in a blur of work and joy, and the everyday challenges of raising a family. Jamie grew into a sturdy, curious boy who followed his father everywhere, eager to learn about ranching. Rose was quieter, more thoughtful, but she had her mother's determination and her father's kindness. Adelaide had long since stopped looking over her shoulder, stopped fearing that her past would catch up with her. Adelaide Zimmerman had truly ceased to exist, buried so deep under the life of Adelaide Stone that sometimes even she forgot that other woman had ever been real. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Russell surprised Adelaide with a trip to San Francisco, arranging for a neighbor to watch the children for a long weekend. It was Adelaide's first time in a real city since her father had died, and she was overwhelmed by the noise and crowds and endless bustle. They stayed in a nice hotel, ate in restaurants, and walked along the waterfront watching ships come and go from all over the world. On their last evening, as they stood on the pier watching the sunset paint the bay in shades of gold and crimson, Russell took Adelaide's hand. "Are you happy?" he asked, the same question he had asked on their wedding night so many years before. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," Adelaide answered. "You gave me a life, Russell, a real life, full of love and purpose and meaning. I do not know what I did to deserve you, but I thank God for you every single day. You deserve everything good in this world. You are the strongest, bravest woman I have ever known. You survived things that would have broken most people, and you came through it with your kindness and your capacity for love intact. That is extraordinary, Adelaide. I only survived because you helped me, because you believed me and chose my side when you had no reason to." Russell turned to face her fully, his gray eyes serious. "I had every reason. I looked at you and saw someone worth fighting for, someone worth protecting, someone worth loving, and I have never, not for one moment, regretted that choice." Adelaide kissed him there on the pier, not caring who might see, pouring a decade of love and gratitude into that kiss. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "Let's go home," Adelaide said. "Let's go home to our children and our ranch and our life. That is where I want to be." They returned to the ranch to find Jamie and Rose healthy and happy. Jamie bursting with stories about everything that had happened in their absence. Rose shyly presenting Adelaide with a bouquet of wildflowers she had picked. Adelaide scooped both children into her arms, breathing in the sweet smell of them, feeling her heart swell with love. That night, after the children were asleep, Russell and Adelaide sat on their porch watching the stars come out. Adelaide leaned against her husband's shoulder, his arm warm and solid around her. "Do you ever think about that night in the barn?" Adelaide asked quietly. "When I first showed up, terrified and desperate, sometimes. It feels like a lifetime ago." "It was a lifetime ago, in a way. I was a completely different person then. You made me into who I am now." "No," Russell corrected gently. "You were always this person, Adelaide, strong and brave and capable of deep love. I just gave you a safe place to let that person flourish. You did the rest yourself." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. Cattle lowing in the distance, horses shifting in the barn, crickets chirping in the grass. It was the sound of home, of peace, of a life well lived. "I want to tell you something," Adelaide said eventually. "Something I have never said out loud before." "What is it?" "That day when I shot Samuel Whitmore, part of me wanted to just give up afterward, turn myself in, let them hang me because I could not see a way forward. I could not imagine a future where I was anything other than a victim or a criminal." Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes. "And then I stumbled into your barn, and you heard my story, and you chose my side. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me love when I felt unlovable. You gave me a future when I thought I had none. And now look at us. We have built this incredible life together. We have children, we have love, we have everything." Russell pulled her closer, his voice thick with emotion. "I am the lucky one, Adelaide. You gave me purpose. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You made me want to be better, do better. You made my life mean something. We saved each other then. Yes, we saved each other." The years continued to pass peacefully. Jamie grew into a young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's dark hair and quick mind. He took over more and more of the ranch work, showing a natural aptitude for it. Rose, at 16, was beautiful and kind, helping her mother with the house and talking about becoming a teacher someday. In 1895, 17 years after that fateful day when Adelaide had fled into Russell's barn, they received unexpected news. A lawyer from San Francisco wrote to inform Adelaide that Samuel Whitmore's widow had recently died, and in her will, she had made a shocking confession. She detailed her late husband's numerous infidelities, his predatory behavior toward vulnerable women, and specifically mentioned Adelaide Zimmerman, stating that she believed Adelaide had been justified in killing him. The widow had apparently felt guilty for years about the manhunt for Adelaide, knowing her husband had been the villain in the situation. The letter included a formal statement clearing Adelaide's name and requesting that any records of the incident be corrected to show self-defense. Adelaide read the letter 3 times, her hands shaking. Russell stood beside her, reading over her shoulder. "She knew," Adelaide whispered. "His wife knew all along what kind of man he was. A lot of people knew, I imagine. They just did not want to rock the boat. Easier to blame you than to acknowledge one of their own was a monster." Russell took the letter from her hands and folded it carefully. "This is good news, Adelaide. It means you are truly free, officially, legally free. The name Adelaide Zimmerman is cleared." "Adelaide Zimmerman," Adelaide repeated slowly. "I had almost forgotten that was ever my name. I have been Adelaide Stone for so long. And you will continue to be Adelaide Stone. But now you can be her without fear, without secrets. That chapter is finally, truly closed." They burned the letter that night in their fireplace, watching the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. It felt cathartic, watching the last physical tie to her old life disappear. Adelaide leaned back against Russell, his arms around her waist, his chin resting on top of her head. "No more secrets," she said. "No more secrets," Russell agreed. "Just us, our family, and whatever time we have left together. Promise me something, anything. Promise me we will grow old together, that I will have you for many more years. I cannot imagine this life without you in it." Russell turned her in his arms so they were face to face. His hair was graying at the temples now, and fine lines creased the corners of his eyes, but to Adelaide he was as handsome as the day she met him. "I cannot promise we will not face hardships or loss. Life does not work that way. But I can promise that whatever time we have, I will spend every moment of it loving you with everything I have. I will be yours until my last breath, Adelaide. That I can promise. Then that will have to be enough." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, but also with renewed passion, celebrating their survival, their love, their victory over the past that had tried to destroy them. The years that followed were good ones. Jamie married a sweet woman from a neighboring ranch, and they built a house on the far end of Russell and Adelaide's property. Rose did become a teacher, working at the schoolhouse in Murphy's, and eventually married the town's doctor. Russell and Adelaide became grandparents, delighting in their grandchildren with the same devotion they had shown their own children. The ranch continued to thrive under Jamie's management, though Russell remained active and involved well into his 60s. Adelaide maintained her garden, cooked for her expanding family, and wrote long letters to Tom in Oregon, maintaining the friendship that had sheltered her during those uncertain months so long ago. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1919, their children and grandchildren threw them a party. The ranch was full of people, full of life and laughter and love. Adelaide stood on the porch watching it all, marveling at how much had grown from those desperate, terrifying days in 1878. Russell came to stand beside her, moving a bit slower now but still strong, still steady. "What are you thinking about? Everything. How far we have come, how blessed we are." Adelaide took his hand, the gesture as natural as breathing after 40 years of marriage. "Do you remember that first night when you found me in your hayloft? I remember thinking you were the most frightened, brave person I had ever seen. And I remember knowing, even then, that my life had just changed in some fundamental way. Did you really know, even then? Maybe not consciously, but my heart knew, my soul knew. You were mine from that moment, Adelaide. I just had to convince you of it. You convinced me." Adelaide smiled up at him. "You spent 40 years convincing me every single day that I was loved, that I was valued, that I was safe. You gave me everything, Russell Stone. We gave each other everything. That is what love does. It multiplies, grows, fills up all the empty spaces until you cannot remember what it was like before." They watched their family together, hands clasped, hearts full. Jamie was teaching his oldest son to rope, the same way Russell had taught him. Rose was helping her daughter arrange wildflowers, passing down Adelaide's love of growing things. Grandchildren ran and played, their laughter carrying on the warm summer breeze. "This is what I was fighting for that day," Adelaide said quietly. "I did not know it then, but this is what was worth surviving for. This life, this love, this family. It was all worth it, every frightening moment, every hard day. It brought me here to you, to this." Russell raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with the same reverence he had shown 40 years before. "And I would do it all again in a heartbeat. I would hide you 1,000 times, ride 1,000 miles, face any danger just to have this, just to have you." As the sun set over their ranch, painting the California hills in shades of gold and amber, Adelaide reflected on the strange path her life had taken. She had been a victim, a fugitive, a woman with nothing to lose and nowhere to go. And then she had stumbled into a barn, met a man with storm-cloud eyes and a kind heart, and everything had changed. He had heard her story and chosen her side. And in doing so, he had given her not just safety or freedom, but love, real and deep and lasting. He had given her a reason to live, a future to build, a family to cherish. They had saved each other that night in the barn, though neither of them had known it at the time. And they had spent the next 40 years proving, every single day, that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. Russell and Adelaide Stone lived out their days on that ranch in California, surrounded by children and grandchildren, and eventually great-grandchildren. They grew old together, exactly as Adelaide had asked, their love deepening and maturing like wine in a barrel, becoming richer and more complex with each passing year. And when they finally passed, within months of each other, as old couples in deep love often do, they were buried side by side on a hill overlooking their ranch. Their headstone bore simple words, "Together in life, together in eternity." But their legacy lived on in the family they had built, in the ranch that continued to thrive under Jamie's care, and then his children's care. It lived on in the stories, passed down through generations, about the grandfather who had been brave enough to shelter a fugitive, and the grandmother who had survived the unthinkable. Most of all, it lived on in the lesson their lives taught, that sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the darkest moments, that courage and compassion can change everything, and that choosing someone's side, believing in them when no one else will, can create a love that echoes through generations. Adelaide Zimmerman had hidden from the law in Russell Stone's barn on a desperate August night in 1878. He had heard her story and chosen her side. And from that single act of courage and kindness had blossomed a love that proved stronger than fear, deeper than scandal, and more enduring than time itself. It was, in the end, exactly the kind of love story the Wild West was made for, raw and real and utterly unforgettable.